Howdy, how's everyone doing today? Welcome to another Redbud virtual hike. This one we're doing in conjunction with the Bear Yuba Land Trust, who maintains the preserve we're at today. We're at the Rice's Crossing Preserve, and we're going to be walking the Yuba Rim Trail, down to the Trabucco Trail, and finally the Yuba Drop Trail. The latter two, which are relatively new, I think they opened about 2 years ago. And if you're willing to do the climb, which we're prepared today to do, you can get down into the river canyon and visit the middle fork of the Yuba, which you can see down here. And we're right at the start of this trail. See, we got beautiful views. There's a nice little pavilion here with some picnic tables. Even if you don't want to hike in, you can come here and enjoy a lunch in nature with these beautiful sights. And yeah, so without further ado, let's head on down the trail. So the Yuba Rim Trail might just be my favorite trail in the local area, and one of the reasons for that is that there's just a ton of different habitats available along the length of this trail. Starting right at the beginning of the trail, we have this nice meadow system, which is, it's a bit early in the year for anything to be flowering in here, but you'll get some wildflowers in this meadow, nice open spaces. We got some coyote brush encroaching it a little bit, but that's not. The coyote brush just tends to make its way into meadows anyway, so that's to be expected. And yeah, as we go along the trail, I will be talking a bit about the different habitat types that we see right here. And all right, let's keep moving. So the next habitat we find ourselves on pretty quickly on the trail is an area that I like to call the pine plantation. I've kind of named all the little sections of this trail just so I, have a word to refer to where I found a certain plant or mushroom or something. And I call it the pine plantation because, as you can see, it's pretty much dominated by ponderosa pine here, which means that there's a very thick layer of pine duff on the ground. And I forgot to mention earlier, but this trail is some of the best mushroom hunting that we have in the area. So it owes to the fact that it has such a diversity of habitat and the fact that most mushrooms associate with a particular kind of tree. And so in this area, for instance, you'll get all of the pine associates. A little bit later on, you'll be getting the tan oak and the madrone associates. And yeah, so one thing I did want to point out while we're here is you can see in the understory of these pines, we have quite a bit of white leaf manzanita. And then over here, a big old buckbrush. So the Ceanothus cuneatus and Arctostaphylos viscida. And so since this area is pretty obviously a planted area, so you have all these ponderosa pines, they're about 25 to 30 years old. They're all evenly spaced out. This says to me that they were planted here. Before they were planted here, you had an open area where the manzanita and the buckbrush got established. And since the pines have now grown and kind of shaded those out, so those shrubs will be kind of on the decline at this point since they don't have their preferred habitat of bright, open, sunny spaces. So yeah, the pine plantation. So right here on this nice open sunny edge, we have a couple large trees. This is our Pacific dogwood. It's our largest dogwood. It's Cornus natalii, and you can see it has started to flower. Those big white flowers there, but I must say, those are not actually flowers. The white that you're seeing are leaves. So the flowers themselves are in a cluster at the center of those white quote-unquote petals. And basically, it costs a lot of energy for a plant to produce petals and other floral parts. And so the dogwoods have decided, no, I'll just change the color of some of my leaves, and those leaves will act as the attractant for the pollinators to be able to find the flowers. But to our eyes, there's not much of a difference. It's still beautiful. And yeah, Pacific dogwood, Cornus natalii. A little further down the trail, and we find ourselves in a tan oak dominated forest. Very shady here, owing to the fact that the tan oaks are evergreen, and so they keep their leaves for year round. Check out these leaves here. They got a lighter underside. The leaves are quite larger than the canyon live oak, which also kind of has that coloration with a dark green and then almost a whitish silvery color underneath. And tan oaks are called tan oaks because they have high levels of tannins in their leaves and in their acorns. And let's see, here's the acorn cap right there. See how it has all of these spiny tubercles all over it. That's one of the main ways you can tell apart a tan oak from a true oak. And tan oaks are in the genus Notholifocarpus. True oaks are in the genus Quercus. So they are related to oaks. They're in the same family, but they are not true oaks, the tan oaks. Let's see. So tan oaks can make these really, really, really tall trees. But then there's another variety that's only a shrub form. And so for whatever reason, from about the Yuba, Nevada County line north into northern Butte County, you get these tree form tan oaks, which are also really abundant along the coast. But elsewhere in the Sierras, you'll just get the shrub form. And so I don't really know exactly why that is the case. Maybe it's the habitat is just right. There's enough moisture in these areas that the tree form can grow. Maybe the Sierras and the coast used to be connected over geological time and they've since drifted apart, and this is just like a relic population of tan oaks. But for whatever reason, we're very happy to have them out here, and what's very cool is you get all of these weird coastal associated mushroom species that associate with the roots of the tan oak. So the Bullard's Bar area in particular is kind of a mushroom hotspot, and you can find mushrooms you can't find anywhere else in the Sierras. So here we have a different species of dogwood. This one grows kind of in wet areas, whereas the Pacific dogwood grows in more dry areas. And you can see the little flowers there on the branch tips, and they're really kind of green, yellowish, and inconspicuous. And this species puts its flowers out before the leaves, so these flowers have been out for a while, considering that the leaves are already emerging. And eventually, once these get pollinated, they will turn into little black fruits that kind of look like an olive, and gives rise to the appropriate common name, black fruit dogwood. This is Cornus sessilis. Much smaller tree than the Pacific dogwood, but those flowers are quite beautiful, aren't they? Little four-petaled flowers. So we've happened upon this beautiful little rosette of leaves growing up on this stalk. This right here is one of our lily species, just starting to grow for the season. This one is growing in a dry area, and so it's really important to note habitat with our lilies because they look a lot alike, but certain species grow kind of on the side of streams or other wet habitats, and some of them grow in these dry areas. And so considering this one is in a dry area, and also because I've seen it before here, I can tell you right now, this is a ranked rare plant. This is Lilium humboldtii, subspecies humboldtii. It will grow maybe 5-6 feet tall and have these beautiful red dangling flowers, and that is if the deer don't eat it, because this is like deer's food. They love to nip off the little buds before they flower, and unfortunately these are kind of disappearing from our range, even though they can be quite abundant in areas, because people see a nice lily, they think they can dig it up and move it, and they cut the flowers off for flower arrangements. And just want to reiterate, don't pick the plants. Come visit them in nature where they belong. And while we're over here, I thought I would point this out. This is one of our native strawberries. We actually have 2 species of strawberries, and you can tell them apart by their leaves. So you have 3 leaflets here, and the one on the end is called the terminal leaflet. And so you want to look at the tip of the terminal leaflet. And you see how this center tooth right here is the same length as the 2 teeth on either side of it. This points to the fact that this is Fragaria vesca, or they call it just wild strawberry. I think both species are just called wild strawberry, so you kind of got to use the scientific name here. So Fragaria vesca, and then our other species, that central, that end tooth right there will be longer than the 2 on either side, and that's Fragaria virginiana. So yeah, now you can tell the difference between the 2 wild strawberries we have in the area. Really nice lily. So the next kind of habitat we have, I've dubbed the switchbacks, and that's because it's about a series of 10 to 12 switchbacks heading up the hill, and this area is pretty different from the forest. You can see there are some tan oaks, there are some pines here, but the majority of the plants are shrubs and berry plants. I often see birds flitting around in here taking advantage of all the food that's offered to them. but you do get somewhat of a different assemblage of plants in these areas where the sun can actually reach the ground. So little interesting set of switchbacks here. So this time of year, you might have seen this tree as you drive past it along the road. It's a pretty common tree. This is the big leaf maple. This is Acer macrophyllum. Macro means big, phylum means leaf. Acer are the maples, so big leaf maple. And they produce these quite large dangling groups of flowers. And their sheer size and their existence at the lower elevations is really diagnostic. Higher up in the mountains, we get two other species, but let's see, can we get close enough? Let's examine these flowers a little closer. So these are the flowers right here. Quite gorgeous little dangling peduncles of flowers. They come out before the leaves. Again, the leaves are just starting to emerge. They're nice and fresh. Really likes to grow in kind of riparian areas, but as you can see in this spot with this multi-trunked individual, it can grow in some dry areas too. But really gorgeous this time of year. I love those flowers. All right, we've reached the next habitat type. This is the section I call the logging road, and that's because we are walking on an old logging road. And the area where they had cleared on this ridgetop here is now being recolonized by all sorts of shrubs. We have at least 3 different kinds of Ceanothus species. We have the white-leaf manzanita. Let's see, there's coyote brush, and then a nice little herbaceous layer at the bottom too. So getting quite dense and tangled in there, but that's what's going to happen as the forest recovers from the effects of the logging that happened here. And now that it's a preserve, this will get a chance to become forested again. And you can actually see, in some cases, the bigger trees, the black oaks there, the Douglas firs, and the ponderosa pines and tan oaks are moving back in, and they just are a little slower growing than all of these shrubs, so it'll get there eventually. Right here, we found a nice little Fritillary. This is Fritillaria micrantha, the brown bells, or the brown Fritillary, and you can see it's another plant in the lily family. It's got whorls of 3 leaves, and then these pendant brownish, purplish, reddish. It's kind of hard to describe that coloration there. Little nodding flowers, and underneath the flowers, see, there's all the flower parts. Got a 3-parted stigma, kind of a speckled, marbled perianth there. That's the word for the petals and the sepals. So these plants right here actually have 3 petals and 3 sepals that look exactly the same. And so we would refer to this whole flower part as a perianth, and collectively the petals and sepals as tepals. And let's see, what else we got in there? Oh yeah, a little nectary. So see that green dot down there? That's where the nectar is formed and entices the pollinators to crawl underneath that flower there and pollinate this guy. And it's another geophyte. I think it's got a bulb or a corm or some kind of underground storage organ there, and it'll send out what's called a feeder leaf, and the feeder leaf tries to collect as much energy from the sun as possible, and once there's enough energy stored in that bulb, it sends up a delightful little flowering stalk like this one. So Fritillaria micrantha. So we've reached our next habitat type, and that is one that is dominated by these deciduous oaks, Quercus calochii, the black oak. These are really enormous, and they are kind of leaning, and they cover a certain kind of aspect on these ridge tops. So they're usually facing the west, so they're more pointing towards the coast. And when you get to the other side, it's a little hotter and drier, so the black oaks failed to show up. And what shows up instead are the evergreen live oaks. And we're going to be getting over to a section like that, so I will talk about the live oaks a little bit later. But I just wanted to point out, totally different forest type here with these beautiful black oaks just leafing out. So here we are at the turnoff for the Trabucco trail, and that's going to connect us to the Yuba Drop trail, which is going to take us down to the river. If you head over here, you will get to the Yuba Rim overlook, which I highly recommend you go to. It's a really gorgeous rock outcropping with amazing views into the Sierra and following the Yuba River down towards the valley. But instead, we are going to subject ourselves to a hike which is not for the faint of heart, which is the Yuba Drop trail. I think it covers something like 2,000 feet in elevation in just like a mile and a half. I could be wrong on those exact numbers, but it feels like that. It's really, really, really steep. So make sure if you're going to come down here, you bring plenty of water, you wear sunscreen, take all the precautions, and definitely for the more experienced hikers among us. All right, let's do it. So following the Trabucco trail down a bit off the ridge, and all of a sudden we are finding ourselves in live oak dominant forests. So this is the canyon live oak. This is a Quercus chrysolepis, and these are evergreen oaks. And so this area remains shady year round, whereas up by the black oaks, that will get that will let some sunlight down to the forest floor during the winter months up until just about this time. So yeah, the plant life beneath these two types of oak forests is not too much different, but it does go to show how important aspect is, which direction the slope is facing into determining what plants grow in a certain area. So we stumbled upon this nice little patch of what's called the blue skullcap. This is Fritillary tuberosa. And you can see over here, it makes these really nice matting rhizomatous patches right here, and then these gorgeous purple flowers. This one right here is in the mint family, Lamiaceae, and so the leaves and the rest of the plant have all these really delicious smelling aromatic oils in them, like most members of the mint family. And a lot of those aromatic oils, the purpose of them is to prevent herbivory, but for whatever reason, humans are immune to that. We really like the smell of a lot of mint family plants. So just a really cool, early blooming, gorgeous wildflower we got here, the Fritillary tuberosa. We stumbled upon one of our beautiful calochortus species. These are known as Mariposa lilies or star tulips. This is Calochortus monophyllus. It is obviously yellow, with the petals being hairy, and then behind the petals are the sepals, these yellow sepals, kind of giving it the appearance of having 6 petals where 3 of them are hairy, but the truth is only the hairy ones are the actual petals. And down in the bottom of that little cup there, you're going to get some nectaries, just like with the Fritillaria. So it's going to entice all sorts of little pollinators and critters to crawl deep down inside of that flower, get covered with pollen, and fly off to the next flower so that they can pollinate it and make seeds. And so here, let's get a side view of that too. This is one of the taller ones I've ever seen, actually. Usually these are held pretty close to the ground, but this one's on quite a long little stalk here. Beautiful Mariposa lily. So the habitat's changed on us once again. We got back out on the ridgetop just a little bit lower down, and this area is very chaparral-like. We have the whiteleaf manzanita. We have the buckbrush again, just like in the understory back in the pine plantation, but we also have some toyon, and over there we got a little bit of deerbrush ceanothus, and a little further down there's some golden fleece. All of these shrubs which make up the kind of chaparral alliance, but this area is definitely hot, dry, open. You can see, even though it's only April, the soil is quite dry, quite hard pan at this time. But yep, we have to walk through it. Check it out, there's even a gray pine here. Kind of a high elevation for a gray pine to show up. Got this black oak here, which kind of looks like how I feel when I've had a little bit too much to eat. So here's a beautiful little perennial shrubby kind of purple flowered wildflower. Let's take a look at those flowers under there. Oh, how nice is that? This is in the genus Solanum, and those of you who garden at home might recognize that genus. This is the same genus as your garden tomatoes. This is in the Solanaceae, the tomato family, the potato family, the eggplant family. All of those are related, and we have three species which look exactly alike. They all have these kind of big purple flowers and those yellow fused anthers in there, and they tend to grow in areas that have been impacted by fire. Maybe there's a fire history here, not exactly sure. But if you want to be able to tell these three apart, you better get out your hand lens, because what you have to do is look at the upper stems and look very, very closely and see if there are any hairs on there. Now, if there's no hairs, then it is one species. If there are hairs and they're branched, it's a second species. And if there are hairs and they are not branched, then it's a third species. And I forget which is which. I'd have to turn to my key to remember the different ones, but the species names are Solanum parishii, Solanum xanthi with an X, and Solanum umbelliferum. So three species, all look a whole lot alike. Very pretty plant though. I really like the color green of the foliage contrasted with the purple of the flowers. So here we got one of our native sweet peas. This is in the genus Lathyrus. It's Lathyrus sulphureus, and they call this the sulfur pea, or the snub pea. Gets these really, really awesome flowers, right? They're kind of small compared to most Lathyrus, but when they're new, they start out kind of whitish with the purple streaks, and as they get older, they turn this kind of peach color. A really cool member of the pea family here. Okay, we have reached the end of the Trabucco trail, and now we are turning onto the Yuba Drop trail. You'll notice that black diamond right there. That is signifying that this is a very strenuous hike, and oh look, it's been adopted by Hiking for Good. Thank you, Hiking for Good. So yeah, at this point, there's no turning back. Well, actually this is an out and back trail, so we can only turn back, but we're gonna make it to the bottom anyway. Well, here we have a different species of Lathyrus, another one of our native sweet peas. This one has much larger flowers. It's got a purple banner. That's the back petal back here. And then these are called the wings. And those are whitish, kind of. Maybe a little bit of a purple blush on there. This one is called Lathyrus nevadense, or nevadensis maybe. I forget which one. I'll write it down below. And they call it the Sierra pea. Native to the Sierras over here, and there is a look-alike to this one, but the look-alike is actually in a different genus. So it's the genus Vicia, which you might know as some of the vetches. Most of the vetches that we have are weedy, non-native species, but we do have a native one, which is Vicia americana. The flowers look almost exactly alike, the leaves look almost exactly alike, and so if you want to be able to tell them apart, what you have to do is find yourself some newly growing leaves, like these ones right here. And so, as you can see, if I can get it to focus, there we go. The new leaves are rolled. See how those leaves, as they're coming out on the right side, well, right in the center of the screen, but that right set of leaflets, the leaflets are rolled up. And so that is how you can tell that this is a Lathyrus, because if this was in fact a Vicia, the leaves, the new leaves, would be folded instead of rolled. So next time, if you have some Vicia near your house, some of the weedy stuff, go look at the new leaves as they're coming out, and you'll see that they are in fact folded up, and these ones are rolled. Same, if you have the invasive sweet pea, the Lathyrus latifolius, the perennial sweet pea with those big, most of the time purple flowers that just takes over and goes crazy, go look at the new leaves on that one, and they will be rolled, because they are also a Lathyrus species. So there you go. Lathyrus versus Vicia. So on these hot exposed areas, you get cool plants like this paintbrush right here. This one is Castanea applegatii, and they call it the wavy leaf paintbrush. And as you can see, many of the leaves are kind of wavy margined, but that's not really a reliable characteristic. To recognize this species, get out that hand lens again, because you're going to be looking at this inflorescence up here, and you're going to be looking for glandular hairs. The other lookalikes either have hairs that are not glandular, or they have tomentose hairs, which basically makes them look kind of woolly, and they're like tangled and woven together. But this one has short little parallel hairs that are topped with a little gland. And so just a little bit about paintbrushes. These yellow pointy bits, that's the actual flower. These red bits are leaves, they're bracts, so they're not the actual flower. And it's really kind of a colorful way to grab the attention of some of your pollinators here. So yeah, see that yellow spike? That's the actual flower. The rest of this thing is just the leaves, but it's really nice contrast, right? With the yellow, red, and this kind of like grayish green coloration. So yeah, Castanea applegatii. Got a little bit of a trail hazard here, so you know, just adding this in to remind you to be careful. Use situational awareness when you're out on the trail, and make sure you're paying attention to where you step. This guy's right in the middle of the trail here, so I'm going to shuffle him off with a branch, staying far back so we can pass. But yeah, I just thought I'd give a little safety warning as well. So here we have a plant with a very apt common name. We call this one Pretty Face, and just look how pretty its face is. So this is Fritillary ixioides, and we have several subspecies of Fritillary ixioides, and this one is subspecies scabra. And the way you could tell that is behind the flower, you have this little tube, this little funnel, that's called the perianth tube, and then the things that look like petals are the perianth lobes. And so it's one structure that's just bent out and gives the appearance of like a tube and petals, but this is really all one petal. And so this is another one of those plants, by the way, with 3 petals and 3 sepals that all look the same. So we call them tepals, and then we call the full flower a perianth. And so the fact that the lobes, the perianth lobes, are longer than the length of the tube, and the fact that those little staminodes, which are those little spiky things in the center of the flower, the fact that those kind of curve out is why we can tell that we have subspecies scabra here. And a little trick, at lower elevations you tend to get scabra, at higher elevations you get annelina is the name of the subspecies. And then there's another one called uniflora, and that one's pretty rare, and that would only have 1 leaf. You can see these 2 leaves back here. These are the 2 seed leaves. So uniflora just has 1 leaf there. So yeah, that's Pretty Face. So talk about a different habitat. On these cliff sides, it suddenly kind of opens up, and you get these nice wildflower areas, these rock outcrops, which have plants that are associated with growing in the thin soils kind of surrounding the rocks, like that monkey flower and several fern species over there. And look, you can finally see the river down there. So we're almost at the bottom, but I'm going to poke around a little bit in these rock crevices and see what we find up there. So what kind of plants can be found on these harsh, open rock outcrops? Well, you get small trees and shrubs like this one right here. This is Fraxinus dipetala, or the 2-petaled ash. So yeah, dipetala, 2 petals. And you can see on these flowers, each one of those flowers only has 2 petals. The other species of ash that we have grows much closer to water usually, and the flowers are way different, and they have no petals whatsoever. Over here we have birchleaf mountain mahogany. I think we've talked about that in a previous video, so I won't go into it too much, but it certainly loves these rocky areas. We have ferns here, like this Pelea andromedifolia, or they call it the coffee fern. And if you look over here, we have really robust of a different Pelea. This is Pelea mucronata, and so we got both Peleas. We have Ceanothus curvipes. This one, the diagnostic part is the pedicel. That's the little stalk that the seed, these are the seeds right here, by the way. The seeds are attached to the stem with a little stalk. The stalk will either be straight and then suddenly turn down. That's Thysanocarbis radians, or it will be like a solid curve the entire way, like this one right here, and that'll be curvipes, Thysanocarbis curvipes. We have a Mara species, Mara watsonii. We talked about this at our Bridgeport video, well, there's no fruits or flowers on this one, but that leaf shape is pretty distinctive. We saw some fruits a little while ago. We have the blue dix, Dipterostemen capitatum. Really likes these hot, dry, outcroppy kind of areas. And let's see, what else do we got? See, lots of blue dix. Lots of blue dix in there. Salaginella. We have Petrahagia. We have a Delphinium. We have Nemophila. We have more of the fairy lanterns. We have Kekiella, which is a relative of the penstemon. All these plants really like these rocky areas. They don't want to be in deep soil. They don't want to be in the forest. They just prefer it out here. So in Nevada County, this is our most abundant bush monkey flower. You'll notice these really nice big orange flowers where all the petals are lobed. Really pretty, right? This is Diplochus grandiflorus. It's the large flower bush monkey flower. It used to be Mimulus, but Mimulus was split up, about close to 10 years now, into two genera, one being Diplochus, like this, and the other being Erythranthe, think like the seep monkey flower that grows in the rivers and such. And the difference is, well, how you tell these apart, it has to do with this green part where the flower comes out. That's called the calyx. And then there's a little stalk that the calyx attaches to the stem. That's called the pedicel. And so it's the ratio between the calyx and the pedicel. So Diplochus, like this one, the pedicel is smaller than the calyx. And on Erythranthe, the pedicel is larger than the calyx. So that's how you can tell these two species apart. Down in the low elevations of Placer County, we get another species, which is really abundant on the coast. That's called Diplochus orientiacus. So that one has smaller flowers, and they're not quite as showy or lobed. So here we have one of our beautiful native Ceanothus species. This species is quite common. You'll see it often in kind of chaparral habitats or other hot, dry, kind of rocky areas. And you'll notice it has blue flowers, and it kind of grows in this low shrub form. A couple other important characteristics to recognize this. See how white the bark is, and that's actually covered in some fine layer of hairs too, if you look really closely. And then lastly, the leaves have these glandular edges. See the little glandular teeth on the edges of the leaves? So this one right here, Ceanothus lemonii, lemon Ceanothus, beautiful blue flowers, smells gorgeous, blooms kind of early, and yeah, just thought I would point out this little guy. You're likely to see it. Okay, here we got another calochortus species. This is, along with the yellow one we were seeing, Calochortus monophyllus, this is probably the most common of the two calochortus that you'll see in the sort of wooded areas. This is Calochortus albus, which they call the globe lantern, globe lily, fairy lantern, lots of common names for such a beautiful plant. And it's one of the calochortus which has a nodding flower. And this little flower is also kind of, it's like closed up. See that? It's got the 3 petals, got 3 sepals on the outside. If you were to open this up, which I'm not going to right now because I can't hold the camera and do this at the same time, but it's also hairy on the inside, and it's got all sorts of like purple speckles, and just a really gorgeous plant. Now this plant, Calochortus albus, and the yellow one, monophyllus, can actually hybridize and produce a plant with sort of intermediate characteristics. So you can see this one's actually kind of quite tall. So the hybrid will be about middle size between the two when monophyllus is quite low to the ground. And the coloration will be kind of this light yellow color, so not quite as bright yellow as monophyllus and not white like this one. And the flower will be pointing up, but sort of at an angle like that. So not like straight up, not dangling, but at this like weird angle like that. And the hybrid can occur anywhere where the two occur together. So there's a chance we might see one today. They're not that common, but they're around. You'll find them every once in a while. So yeah, there you go. Calochortus albus. Holy cow. All right. Well, this is one of our more pretty species of monkey flower. This is yet another Diplochus species, so it is in the same genus as the bush monkey flower with those big orange flowers. But look at the deep purple coloration on this one. It's quite small. There's my hand. Quite small. It's got a black ring in the throat, and then deep down in the throat, which is probably not coming out on camera too well, there's yellow coloration. Just an absolute splash of color. And then check it out. So remember I was talking about how Diplochus have the pedicel is short and the calyx is long. Well, I don't know if you can see that, but the calyx right there is pretty much sessile. Like there's almost no pedicel whatsoever. It's right on the stem. And then it's got a really, really, really long flower tube. So really cool plant. Oh, and also look at the anther. It's an X. It's like a rounded kind of X with like 4 little lobes there. How sweet is that plant? Beautiful plant. Diplogus Kelloggii, Kellogg's monkey flower. What a treat to see it here. So who doesn't like a gorgeous flowering vine? This right here is Clematis lacciantha. This is the Chaparral Clematis. Look how beautiful those showy flowers are. And so this is climbing up an ash tree right here and using the structural support of the tree so that it can just put out a little tiny stem and doesn't have to invest so many resources into rigid cells that can support its own weight. And then when it gets to the top of the canopy, it just puts out its own flowers so that pollinators kind of notice it. It's got beautiful opposite leaves. See the leaves coming out of either side of the stem there? Kind of divided there. They're in the buttercup family. So a lot of stamens, a lot of anthers. And what do we got there? That's about 4 petals. Looks like 4 petals. So Clematis lacciantha has 4 petals. What a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. All right, so we have reached our final destination. Well, it's the halfway destination anyway, because we still have to climb back out. But we are down here in the beautiful Middle Yuba River, excuse me, in this amazing canyon, which, don't really have the energy to explore much other than just going down to the bottom and splashing some water on my face. But one of these days, I'll get to spend some significant time down here looking at all the little nooks and crannies. And of course, this represents the final habitat of the day, which is a riparian area. So there's water, specialty plants that grow on the edges or even submerged in the water. But we're not likely to see a lot of those today because they tend to grow they tend to flower rather in the summertime because they have that water available to them. They're not like these plants up on the ridge that have to hurry up and set seed and start the cycle over again before it gets too hot and dry and our rain completely dries up. So anyway, I think we're gonna end the video here because nobody wants to hear me huffing and puffing climbing back up that canyon. But I do want to thank you so much for viewing. I ask you please check out the Bear Yuba Land Trust. They do wonderful work conserving the lands in Nevada County and providing us with access to nature through these kinds of trails and just this place, you wouldn't have been able to get down here if it wasn't for them. This would have been, absolutely impassable. So yeah, thank you so much to Bear Yuba Land Trust. And also please like and subscribe to our channel if it so behooves you. If you like what we do here at Redbud. You can visit our website at chapters.cmps.org/redbud. You can like us on Facebook, find us on Instagram. You can join our Facebook forum, and there we will give you any advice you might need about native plants. We can identify plants for you. Really, you can just bring any native plant related topic to us, and yeah, get a chance to talk about it with fellow plant nerds. Oh yeah, see, that's the ridge we got to climb back out on. A lot of fun. But we're gonna take a lunch break down here, drink lots of water, and take our time heading up there because it was quite steep and treacherous coming down. So once again, I wouldn't attempt this hike unless you're pretty well in shape and you got plenty of time. You don't want to be coming down here with only an hour or 2 before dark. Here, check out, that's kind of cool. There's like a cave over there where when the water mark reaches up there, it kind of swirls around. It's dug out that little cave. Yeah, you can see in the canyon here that the rocks are kind of grayish, bluish, and then they become dark colored. That's the high water mark right there. So this entire canyon can be filled with water on a flood year. The river, it looks like it would in the summer right now, which is really concerning. There's just not a lot of water. We didn't get a lot of rain. So yeah, that's unfortunate, but it's still a beautiful spot. It's still nice to come down here. And I guess that I will bid you adieu. So thank you so much for watching.